Well, hey, church, I want to give another health update. I think this will be my third. It's been at least, a month since my last, maybe longer. I've been getting a lot of text messages lately and phone calls and emails, and many of you are stopping me at church and asking how I'm doing. And I really appreciate your continued prayers and concern for me. It's appreciated much more than you know, and I felt like I should give a health update in light of making some progress and then kind of backtracking in some ways. And so I think 3 weeks ago, I pushed it really hard. I preached a few times, really kind of got back into probably about 90% of my work, and felt good initially, and then it just hit me and I crashed. And really what that means, when I crash, I'm not dying when that happens, but I can't lift my head up. It's just utter exhaustion. Haven't really ever experienced anything like this. It's a very unique sickness. So just you just physically crash, mentally crash, and it lasts for a day or so. But the problem is that it reactivates all the symptoms and it slows recovery time. And so I don't want to keep doing this. It's difficult to know if you're overdoing it because you feel fine, and then you just overdo it. And that could be from drawing. I could be doing study, and that mental exertion works the same as physical exertion. Coth of them pull from the same place. And then just dietary reasons. I could eat things that are wrong, and it could have the same effect. So I'm just learning how to, just purging my blood, detoxing my blood of these microclots and spike proteins. It takes time. And it's working, but it's just very slow. And so I've slowed down preaching. I'm still doing counseling and meetings and things, and I'm just going slower at a slower pace with everything. And I've paused my doctoral work. I will, Lord willing, summertime, I plan to begin my dissertation and continue on. But I felt like I should speak into this. I should continue to speak into suffering. I do feel there's a stewardship in this season. Scripture is clear that we should comfort those with the comfort that we ourselves have received from the Lord. And I've received a lot of comfort from the Lord in this season. And so, I want to say this to those of you who are suffering, and you all will suffer in various ways. You will suffer various trials. You've got perspective is everything. Perspective is everything. You've got to answer this fundamental question: why am I sick? Why am I suffering? For many years, for me, it goes back before this most recent, 3 or 4 months. It goes back, early in my life, just chronic back issues, and I had to answer that question and wrestle with that. But for anybody who's going through any extended period of suffering, even shorter suffering, you've still got to answer the question: why? Why? Why am I suffering? Why am I sick? Why do I have this disease? And I would say that there are tertiary reasons, there are secondary reasons, and there are primary reasons. And so there's lots of causes and layers of causality to why we may be going through what we're going through. But I'm talking about the ultimate question. You need to answer the ultimate question: why am I sick? And how I've answered that question, and I've found this immensely helpful. In fact, it is the most helpful thing in suffering, is to come to the realization that I am sick because God made me sick. It is his plan. He ordered this for me. He ordained this for me. This is not an accident. This is very purposeful from the hand of the Almighty. And that right there galvanizes your spine to endure some serious suffering without getting bitter, without getting hopeless, even rejoicing in it. As hard as that is, it's impossible, in fact, apart from the Spirit. All these things are impossible apart from the Spirit. But by the Spirit of God, and with that perspective, you can endure these things. And, I was taught early on by some godly mentors that a pastor's duty is to prepare his flock for suffering, so that when they go through suffering, and they will, you can show up at the hospital, you can sit by their bed, and you can pray with them, and you can weep with them, and you can just be there. And it isn't time for teaching theology about all of God's purposes in suffering. I learned that early on from the pastoral perspective. But now I'm the one in the bed. I'm the one in the sick bed, and I'm thankful that I had learned these things early on. So I'm not asking the question, while I'm sick, why is this happening to me? I know. Day one of this, it was settled in my mind. God has done this to me. I mean, that's how Job endured suffering, is it not? Job was able to say, the arrows of the Almighty have pierced me. His arrows. He gives and he takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That Job had a view of God's providence, a view of God's sovereignty over his sickness. We know the devil was a part of it. He had to ask permission to afflict Job. There's a secondary cause, right? But the ultimate cause, Job's issue was with God. Read the book of Job. I'm reading through Job right now. Read 10 chapters of Job today. And his issue is all vertical. All vertical. His issue is with God. He knows God is the one who has done this to me. And you don't just stop there. You would be embittered at God if that's where you end. It is not, what I'm not telling you to do is just have a view that God is sovereign or God is providential. That will make you bitter at God. What you must understand is that God is not only sovereign, he is not only the one with ultimate authority, he is not only the one providentially governing every blessing and hardship in your life, but he is doing it for his good and wise purposes. Do you understand that? This is the God of the Bible. This is why Islam knows nothing of this God. They know of a sovereign God, but not a good God, not a loving and personal God. Yahweh is different. And so there's no randomness in the Bible regarding God. Proverbs 16:33, the lot is cast into the lap. But its every decision is from the Lord. So something as random as a roll of a dice. You say, what could be more random than rolling a dice? And yet its very decision is from the Lord. And so I mentioned in a sermon a few, it was a few weeks ago, on purity of heart. And there was this quote by Bavinck that it's gripped me for years now. I've been meditating on this quote. He says, "The pure in heart see God everywhere." The pure in heart see God everywhere. And so it's purity of heart that enables you to see God not just in all the blessings in your life, not just when everything is going right, but when things are going wrong, when things are difficult. A view of God's providence, enables you to see God everywhere. And when you see God in your suffering, you are full of hope because you know He has good purposes. He has good plans. Romans 8:28. Every good biblical counselor knows this passage. For we know that for those who love God, all things, how many things? All things work together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. For those whom He foreknew, He predestined to become conformed to the image of His Son. So what's the good that He's working all things toward? The conformity of my life and your life into the image of His Son. He's working all things toward that end in the believer's life. It's very comforting in our affliction. And we also know Matthew 12, Jesus said this, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father." So He takes the cheapest living being. I mean, if 1 penny buys 2 sparrows, there's not, that'd be like a worm in our day, 2 worms, about as cheap of a living being as you can buy. And He said, not one of them falls to the ground apart from your Father. And He says, but even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, therefore, for you are more value than many sparrows. And so, again, you see not only the sovereignty of God, but the good purposes of God behind His sovereignty. You see the kindness of God behind His providence, working it to the conformity of your life into the image of His Son, which is joy-producing, which is eternally rewarding. And ultimately, God is working all things toward that eternal inheritance that He has awaiting us. So here's the advice for those of you who are suffering. I would say you must fight to see God everywhere. You've got to fight for it. This is not the time to read your Bible less or pray less. This is the time to read your Bible more, to attend church more, to force yourself to do everything you don't feel like doing physically, maybe emotionally and psychologically, but spiritually, I need it. And so you put yourself under the corporate means of grace. You put yourself under the private means of grace. And you allow the Spirit of God to slowly strengthen you. Outwardly, you're wasting away, but inwardly, you're being what? Renewed day by day. That's the hope in suffering, is that although your outer self is decaying and wasting away, inwardly, you can actually become stronger. You can actually become more godly and more Christ-like, especially when you're suffering. And so that's the hope. That's the hope in suffering for all of God's people. He is good to us. May you, by His grace and His Spirit's enabling, endure these trials, my brother or my sister. Blessings.